Who really writes the rules of society? Is it presidents? Parliament? Governors? Sure, they sign the laws. But behind the curtain are powerful influencers you rarely see. They're called lobbyists and think tanks. They don't run for office. You don't vote for them. Yet somehow, they help shape the very laws you live by. They use money. They use research. They use quiet connections to change outcomes. Let that sink in. Once you understand how they work, you'll start seeing the system differently. And trust me, you'll never look at politics the same again. Imagine a giant tech company is facing a new tax law. They don't want to pay more. So what do? They don't just wait around. They hire a lobbyist. Now, what exactly does a lobbyist do? They're professional persuaders. Many are ex-politicians or government insiders. They know who to talk to, when to talk to them, and how to get results. They set up meetings. They share research. They offer campaign donations. And sometimes, they even suggest changes to the bill itself. Here's a real example. In the United States, Big Pharma lobbyists helped block efforts to let Medicare negotiate cheaper drug prices. Why? Because that would cut into their profits. The law stayed the same. The prices stayed high. Now here's the kicker. Lobbying is totally legal. But only the rich and powerful can really afford it. So who wins? Not the average citizen. Now let's talk about think tanks. Think of them as idea factories. They're made up of researchers, scholars, and former officials. People who spend their time studying big problems, like war, healthcare, poverty, and the economy. They write long reports. They publish studies. And they come up with solutions. Sounds useful, right? But here's the twist. Many think tanks are privately funded. By billionaires. By corporations. Even by foreign governments. So their research isn't always neutral. For example, the Heritage Foundation helped shape U.S. policies like welfare reform and tax cuts. On the other hand, Brookings leans more liberal and influences social policy. These reports don't just sit on shelves. They make it to TV interviews, online articles, news headlines. And suddenly, public opinion starts shifting. Not because people studied the facts, but because the messaging was everywhere. Here's where it gets interesting. Think tanks and lobbyists often work as a tag team. The think tank writes the script. The lobbyist delivers it. Let's say a think tank writes a glowing report about how tax cuts for big companies will boost the economy. That report lands in a lobbyist's hands. The lobbyist then walks into a lawmaker's office, armed with that research. They say, "Here's a study from top experts. You should back this bill." It sounds convincing. It looks official. It even comes with charts and footnotes. But what the lawmaker doesn't always know is that the think tank and the lobbyist may be backed by the same group. That's how influence works. Quiet, coordinated, powerful. It creates the illusion of objective research. But it's often part of a carefully planned strategy. So, who do these lobbyists and think tanks really work for? Is it the people? Is it you? Is it me? No. They work for whoever pays them. That means big corporations, billionaires, foreign governments, and powerful interest groups. They don't answer to voters. They answer to funders. And that's a serious problem. Because if you have money, you can hire lobbyists. You can sponsor think tanks. You can shape public policy behind the scenes. But if you don't, your voice is easy to ignore. That's why we see laws that benefit the rich. Even when most people disagree. It's not always about what's right or fair. It's about who has access, and who has leverage. And that's not democracy. That's power, disguised as policy. Now here's a fair question. Can think tanks exist without lobbyists? Technically, yes. They can write reports, publish articles, host discussions. But here's the reality. Without someone to push their ideas into government, Their work often stays buried in papers and podcasts. A think tank without a voice and power is like a brilliant musician with no stage. That's why many think tanks team up with lobbyists to make sure their ideas travel. Lobbyists carry those ideas into the rooms where laws are written. They pitch them to lawmakers, shape them into policy proposals, and negotiate them into law. So even if a think tank claims independence, its real-world impact often depends on who's delivering the message. And often, that messenger is wearing a suit, carrying a donor list, and knows every name in the room. Laws come from parliaments and congresses. But the ideas behind those laws? They're often born in private boardrooms, elite circles, and whispered meetings between lobbyists and lawmakers. Groups like AIPAC, NRA, and the Chamber of Commerce. They all play this game. They don't just influence. They shape the system itself. And we call that democracy? Or is it something else? Here's what I want to ask you. Who do you think really writes the rules in your country? Can democracy survive if most people can't afford to influence it? And should lobbying be reformed, or banned altogether? Drop your thoughts in the comments. We want to hear what you think. If this opened your eyes, hit like. Share it with a friend who needs to see this. And subscribe, so you never miss the truth behind the headlines. Because understanding the system is the first step to changing it.